Hi everyone, hey Wiesbaden, how are you today? Pretty hot, yes? Hey, it's great to be here and thanks for having me, thanks for inviting me, thank you so much and thanks for coming, obviously. This presentation, here you see it, it's called Performative Design and it tries to advocate the potential of communication or graphic design as a catalyst for transformation and invitation to actively reimagine things and maybe to be a playful little bit. So let's start. Performative design. Here I'm going to try to position communication design as a practice that has capacity to form worlds through action, interaction, imagination, but also care. How can we understand this? How can we unpack this? Let's try to reflect on the question, what are our roles, responsibilities, and capacities as situated world makers? My name is Tereza Ruller. I know I've been already introduced, but let's get through this again. I'm co-foundress of communication design studio De Rodina, based in Amsterdam. I identify as she, her, like a pronouns, and a mother, designer, educator, currently professor of digital design at HFG Karlsruhe, which is really exciting because it's so close by. Yes, but I'm also a research design tutor at Artes Arnhem and newly 3D critical narratives and environments at Design Academy Eindhoven. Yes, I did it. So these are all my jobs next to having studio and taking care of a kid. Yes, and I really like to look at graphic design through the lens of action and performance. So the design making here, it's rather critical and conceptual practice than solution and service oriented. However, these things that I'm showing, these also pay our bills, so these are actually service oriented research projects. But I should probably tell you a bit more about the studio itself, because it's not only me having a studio, it's two of us co-founders, so two founders, and we always wanted to work in environments that would be safe to start a family and have our kid, because we love each other and we also work together. And perhaps the studio space could be a laboratory or a playground or a place for dialogue and discovery through design. So that was our wish. Here I have my favorite diagram that I always change. Let's be aware as situated designers that what we are working on, every project is shaping our future, always. And then maybe not just our future, because as we communicate and are designers, then it also impacts others. And here I think everyone, if you would create this kind of scheme, each of you, you would put different values and virtues and goals yourself. So you might have your different scheme, different diagram. But for me, it's right now is this. So let's not to be afraid to ask, where lies our responsibility as designers? How does what we do contribute to society? So see this diagram as like sort of a compass to orientate through the world of design with your core values while working on a project. And really, of course, we would like to, that each of our project is located somewhere in the middle, right above me, but how to balance it, how to get there, it's so difficult. For example, if you want to have excellent design project, but also highly experimental, how can you balance this out? If you want to be conceptual, but also very situated and in the context, or be inclusive, also with all the accessibility, right? But how can you be highly imaginative? It's a challenge, but yeah. Let's get through this. In the studio, in the Rodina, we research and experiment with togetherness, playfulness, and interaction with communication design. So maybe let's try to unlearn what design practice should look like and stop thinking in mediums. It's way more complicated, I guess. Back to performative design, we should talk about performance and ask many questions. So we can start asking, how can we design situations and environments that encourage activity and participation? How can design lead towards transformation? And this transformation is happening in viewer. How can it lead to even transformation of social context when it impacts small community or people who are involved? My answer is, hopefully, and I believe in that, you might not, but that's fine. It's through action in design, it's through performance in design. Because design has capacity to go beyond only object-centric practice. We can do more than objects and more than arrange beautiful compositions, more than posters, more than websites. So communication design can incorporate action and active bodies, playfulness, emotions, and can be experimental with the design process and kind of reveal what the design process might be. And all that leads to transformation. So what is special? This transformation is not visible during the performance. It's happening inside the participant. And ultimately, the question could be, how can then viewers of our design be more affected or even involved in these design situations? Because the audience previously conceived as a viewer or the passive observer is now repositioned into way more active co-producer, the active one. So people want to be part of our design, right? They want to do different exchanges, communicate, test out things, touch things, rearrange things. But how to invite participants to co-create, to play with it? It's the biggest challenge. It's not easy that people would get up and just join any kind of performance. No, they don't want to, or it's challenging. So let's make them comfortable. How? We can design scores or graphic scores, see them as scripts for possible action, so people are more invited through having these. These scores, I believe that they bring more than choreography of what can happen. They instigate different social processes. Or different sketches, what might the event look like, what can happen before it actually happens. To engage with your audience, my second tip would be you can use different props, such as like 3D printed tools and little objects to give away. Because people like to receive small gifts. If they do something for you, with you, they're gonna get something small as well. I think it's a nice exchange for their time, for their courage. These are some medieval metal artifacts found underneath Oxford University, just to show you a sample of giveaway 3D printed stuff. A collaboration with Oxford University laboratories. And these things were hidden underground for centuries, but if you reprint it, of course it needs to go to a museum, but if you reprint it, 3D print it, and reimagine it a little bit, like, you design it a bit more, then it can become an artifact that everyone can have. And people love to get little presents, so it's nice. And that's why they can join your performance. Another advice, the third one, would be to design something wearable for them. So to connect with your audience, you can do it through wearable props, like ponchos here. And this method, the power of poncho, we've learned from Brazilian performance artist and activist Martha Araújo. She already pioneered this 50 years ago. Dedicated to her practice, to Araújo's practice, these were our first geological ponchos, geo-ponchos, costumes for role play. So people can wear these. And these ponchos, I see them as tools for embodiment or role play. Role play is, So they help the way of becoming something else, imagining you can be someone else. So participants, these volunteers, they transform themselves during this action with help of these ponchos. However, this is all happening in carefully designed setup. And creating such ponchos, here you can see these are different like earthly extraction designs, and it takes around an equal time for research and for sewing them, making them physically connected, do different underlining, softness to being worn. So we had 3 examples, and now we should talk about setting a stage. Because it's obvious that we've learned from other disciplines such as architecture, performance art, and these practices led us to investigate and create various spaces for action, and we call these playgrounds. In these playgrounds, we work with participants and their imagination to start a debate, a dialogue, to engage. These playgrounds are spaces mapping and inviting the imaginary. We can test here our different worldviews, right? We can debate. And this also allows us to speculate and doubt together, to have questions and be uncertain about stuff. Like here, the uncertainty seminars actually started this whole thinking about critical playgrounds. So these playgrounds are hopefully safe spaces for experimentation, inclusion, but when you invite people in, even though this would be audience that goes to museum or art events, you would have collision. So that's why you need to think about how this safe space then be actually safe to discuss things that are difficult, to be ready for this collision, friction, right? The ideas are not evenly unified, and that's fine, but how can we make it safe space? Yeah. And artists and different community members and communities themselves, they can meet there and debate. So the friction, but also, the voices can be heard in such spaces. There are many other playgrounds, different sets for design performances that we've created. Because playgrounds are spaces where the performance through design can emerge and can happen and can engage. This one is called Unionize, and it has been conceived as space to come together. In Unionize, we talked about difficult working conditions in creative industry. And some of these playgrounds, they turned into installations, but I think more like conversational pieces that really a conversation could emerge. And I've learned a lot because through listening to people, discussing, debating, also of course many students, but through that, giving voice to people and setting the stage in a way that it's very horizontal, you can learn a lot and you can really empower the collectivity, which is really nice. Even though it's small, it's not impacting millions of people, it's impacting just the small group, right? Viewers can express their own experiences here in Unionize. And the social dialogue becomes, perhaps a medium. I know I said we shouldn't think in mediums, but social dialogue might become a medium for us. And communication design supports it. By participating, by practicing justice together, it's our right and responsibility to recreate the world around us. According to participatory art theorist Claire Bishop, participation is actually a key because it rehumanizes society fragmented by the repressive instrumentality of capitalist production. Well, you can sleep on this quote, but it's quite essential for me. We hope to create most needed spaces to doubt together, recreating new relations between people. Sometimes it gets even not just like human to human, but human to non-human when we can become these earthly bodies, for example. So this one is in Design Museum London. And then we're moving now to Istanbul. This playground really is geography of imaginary places. You're invited to step in. So these are geometric forms, emojis inhabiting different locations on the maps. And they should work as vertigo to pull the viewer into the world, to step inside it. These playgrounds are at the same time fictional maps. There is something very poetic about it. Maybe because we've collaborated with a poet and curator to write all these imaginary spaces in the playground. So it really became a big poem, but also a map of imaginary world. This one is called Carpet of Voices, and it's currently exhibited at Van Abbe Museum. And it's Why I call it carpet of voices? Because there are very strong female voices in the room itself. These are artworks standing on the carpet. And it really celebrates power of feminist resistance and rebelship, as well as unconditional care, like motherly love. These are different artworks, so it's also difficult how to work with completely different voices of different artists. You can experience it actually yourself because it will be exhibited till 2026, so there's a little bit of time to get there. Inside, you can become explorer, you know, becoming part of the design as well, wearing a poncho again, right? Power of poncho, you remember now, so yeah, this is happening. So you explore the space, and you can experience this performative playground and open up possibility to maybe subvert things that are familiar through questioning or repairing what was forgotten, overlooked, misremembered, or even suppressed or denied, to oppose suppression and violence with equality and love, justice, and sustainability. So hopefully these playgrounds steer imagination through collective exploration and play. But back to the building of Van Abbe Museum, there's not just a carpet. They have huge, massive collection of 120 artworks on display in this building, which is 5 floors, 16 gallery rooms that we had to design. Give it a shape, give it an idea, not just color of the wall, much more. How to make it inclusive and accessible for many people. Because it is an extensive multi-sensorial show spanning across all these floors. It covers experiences of all visitors. It's quite radical. So we've been designing with and for different constituent groups. For example, visually impaired groups or neurodiverse groups, etc. So making this art in the museum accessible, inclusive, it means literally thinking also in touching things, smelling things. Or we worked on special collection of sensorial replicas that you can really touch objects that are otherwise flat as paintings, having different smell cards. Or instead of looking at Picasso, you could literally touch Picasso and feel the shapes, right? Well, some people touched Picasso painting and the security weren't happy about it, but yeah, needs to happen. So the museum needed to, and they wanted to, de-modernize themselves and de-patriarchalize themselves and decolonize themselves and totally queer themselves. So that's why they had this phenomenal journey of different constituents to giving different voices, different perspectives to their collection. And they did really well. I was impressed. But we need to move on because our time is short here. Perhaps we should think about what kind of world we have created as humans, as designers, and this stone knows an answer. How will our future generations see our time? What will remain for future generations? What kind of world is the result of our work, of our endeavor? What planet are we passing on to them? What will be left from all these beautiful images and seductive designs that we create? This is a future fossil, and we see the fossil as, or this future fossil, as the remain of the age when humans irreversibly changed the geological setting of the planet. These are morphing bodies, hybrids between geological, technological, and biological bodies, and I call them pickled humans. Well, I really like pickles, so these are pickled humans. While rendering these future fossils, these pickles, we worked on a publication that gathers fascinating knowledge. It contains essays about intersectional feminism, ecology, Afrofuturism, decapitalism. I haven't heard of it, but I was quite excited about that one. And we were desperate to activate this important knowledge locked inside the book. But how to transform the readable content into spatial experience? What if spreads of a book become walls and you can walk around them? What happens when the book becomes environment? You can explore it as a player. Hereby is the top architecture from the game engine that we've built. You can see central area. You can read some feminism there in the middle, but then you can spread into more difficult reads. So the content truly became walls and created atmospheric sceneries and layered landscape. It's a meta book because you can explore the book as a player, and during the book launch, who had the highest score in the book game, they could win the real printed book. So we had quite some achievements there on the score levels. Well, you can play it or experience it yourself, but turning physical book into a video game raises a particular question. How can designers engage in creating virtual worlds as alternatives and proposals to the current world we live in? And I don't see this as escape to create these worlds. It's not escapism, it's really more alternatives. Because the tools, the software, the knowledge, and also the hardware for such world making, these are widely accessible now. So why should they be left only for commercial purposes in hands of companies of entertaining industry? No. Designers and artists, they can use game engines and virtual worlds as their medium. Here. Let's remind ourselves what anthropologist Arturo Escobar writes in his iconic publication, Designs for the Pluriverse. All design creates a world within the world, in which we are designed by what we design as subjects. So it's this kind of loop of what we design will change us, and again and again. Design is a process of world making, and we should embrace this pluriverse of worlds within our world through our imagination and participation in it, right? Being actively participating. Maybe through democracy, right? That's why it is here. Since COVID, we've been prototyping some tools for spending time together because we couldn't engage in these physical performances that I showed you. So we had to do something digitally, online, virtually. And we tried to train our capacity to imagine future different from present at that time because it was very uncertain time. For example, this was done by 30 10-year-old children during COVID. So these 30 children, they drew a big adventure ecological jumping game reflecting on sustainability and use of resources. They draw different assets, and we had to help them with the code, or they haven't coded it yet. But it came out as an online game, and they could play it for Christmas. It's still online, so you can play it as well. This is the link. Yeah, you can dive into their world of sustainability. These virtual worlds are dream worlds. We see such world making as a creative practice, proposing different alternatives. And it's a strange phenomena, but while creating these different virtual spaces, we realized and learned that they are actually maybe more inclusive and affordable and accessible than some galleries and theaters or schools, because these you can see as privileged spaces. These can be entered online on any device. Actually, if you have smartphone, it's a super powerful rendering machine, and the 3D graphics can be rendered within your graphic card on your phone, which is insane. So to play these, you don't need to be physically in one place. You can be anywhere on the planet. So yes, we believe that through our imagination, we can sculpt these and plan these virtual worlds, create unstable surfaces that are in constant change, in the movement, in time, in feeling. But how do we rethink being together than otherwise through these platforms? How can we reclaim means of production of future? Is it moving? No? Okay. Now it's moving? Yes. Because imagining worlds is a powerful practice in reconstructing our dreams and desires, in really reclaiming something back, right? And engaging with it. So since 2020, we designed and programmed around 9 different virtual multiplayer custom streaming environments, like for different live music festivals, gallery openings. Especially during COVID, this was quite useful then to have it. Multiple stages, live. For example, this one was based on visiting internet artworks in their native environment, which is the internet, right? So finally not being exhibited on the white walls of the gallery, but being part of the online culture fully. I mean, now you can recognize that I grew up adoring game environments somehow. But let's look outside. Let's be or become involved in the matter of the physical world. Because for long, we all know that these digital and seemingly very light, immaterial, right, cloud store design projects, they're actually chewing and eating our very own planet we all live on. So that's a little bit complicated. I'm not this kind of techno-optimist, right? It might look like before, but yeah, it's way more complicated. You have super skills. We have super skills design skills, right? To tell complex stories visually and through actions and emotions. Maybe through narrativity as well. Some of you work with storytelling narratives as well. That works as well. By asking, actually, how to use design to reveal stuff rather than hide. So we shouldn't be afraid in telling complex stories. Because I know as designers, we are trained in being able to cut everything out and really focus on the main motto and narrow things down. But what about complexity of this kind of earth responsibility, of this earthly survivor, I would say. So in 2019, we wrote an essay about massive resource extraction behind design surfaces, and of course, choices of designers. Design theorist Alice Twemlow, she writes about it. She talks about the visibility, measurability, and direct impact of the damage by design that puts us and the planet in direct danger by products and even values we might share. And I would add also through our lifestyle that we have, not just as designers and as we are performing also our roles of being designers, but as end users of all the different companies, all the different services, licenses that we're using. I mean, also our software, right? I don't know who is able to fully work without Adobe, which is kind of monopoly. It's really difficult. And I know there's open source and we can have alternatives, but it's really difficult to get out of monopolized services, right? So yeah, it's also our lifestyle. Just to make it clear, we are all challenged by the constant neoliberal hunt for innovation and having impact. So how can we subvert this? I believe through performance in design. I really believe in that. The Rodina's most recent Worlding, a project of creating and imagining new world, presents 130 pores. Pore as a pore, like a skin pore, a pore in orange peel. But these pores are portals or gates, revealing the worst ecological disasters, such as oil refinery, explosions, toxic releases, nuclear power plant collapses, fires, oil spills, deforestation as well. And you can go through these, basically. Clearly, extraction of resources has immediate and deeply concerning influence on ecosystem in which we and other species are. And also these technologies, if we consider, okay, we live also together with our technologies. And here, visitors of this online project, they can fly through different portals that open into the world of disasters and ecological catastrophes behind humankind. So you're basically collecting them as they happen. And me researching that, actually there's so much hidden and being like put under the surface. It's really difficult to find a lot of information about all these disasters, because of course they are behind really big companies that don't want to talk about these things that happened, right? So how can we designers show that we care for restoring planetary life conditions in today's human-driven ecological climate disaster? Why to invest in critical environmental design, ecological research? How can we embrace the concept of coexistence on this planet with currently 8 billion of other species? That's a question. We can do it through design, if we are designers, because we care for intersectional equality. We care for multi-species, for justice. And we are our own example here. We know that for long, our bodies are vessels of interconnected organisms. We are earthlings, interwoven with microbes and elementally knotted with bacteria. Here, I'm really following and borrowing Donna Haraway's concept of relationality and entanglement. So what I'm trying to say here and convey, use your imagination to amplify what matters and activate the positive change. Thank you so much.
I didn't want to stop the music. I just wanted the allowance to come on stage, but
there was no more visuals there.
No more videos.
There was
okay,
intention to end it there.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot. That's a lot to take in. You already answered some questions that I was preparing, especially about let's say, the recipes and the tricks that you came up with, that you know how it works, because I think that's interesting for a lot of people here who are used as a designers to create a piece and put it out there. And of course, going into that kind of interaction is a craft in itself. So thanks for sharing your methodology. Are there questions already from the audience? It always takes a moment, so I will have fun. I think your husband and kid are also here. Are they in the hall or outside on the playground?
Now there is another conference hall, and it's for businessmen. There is some event now. It's closer to the city center, and there's a big fountain, and the kid is now in the fountain bathing, and it's kind of, yeah.
I believe you.
I saw pictures. I received them right before. So
Okay.
half naked in front of all these businessmen there.
Because your partner, Vid, I think he's a developer. How did this play out? Is this important for the kind of work you do? Because that's, of course...
Most important is that he studied psychology, right? So he studied psychologist, but then he did architecture renderings, and then he started coding. Yeah.
As you do. Okay. But I can imagine that doing that kind of work, working with someone who's not actually trying to create a fixed object, but of course developing is also creating interactive systems.
Yeah, working with me, it's a very disruptive process, right? So he has to adapt and challenge himself with my presence, and it's really difficult, but he's really good and he's really trying his best, which I'm really proud of, that we have this very creative dialogue and debate. So yeah.
It also seems like a lot of fun, so I think we shouldn't feel too much pity for him. Any more questions? Here's one in the front.
So as an artist, how do you, for yourself, like personally, measure the success of your projects, like the resonance of the people or your personal enjoyment?
You think during performances? Because only measure for me is if someone wants to pay for it. And then I think, okay, yeah. Yeah. But if it's performance, then for me what's measurable is sometimes very difficult to measure. So these are many unmeasurable things, as I try to say, this transformation. And if the participants afterwards come back to me and they share, you can really hear them, and it's really beautiful that sometimes it can work, and that's where I'm happy. Yeah, yeah.
It's exceptional that in so many projects and works you did, you show up yourself, you populate your own projects.
I was young.
But is this kind of hard to be out there? I mean, a lot of designers are like, here, this is what I'm doing, please, yeah. But I'm also kind of hiding behind it, and you're really a part of that.
Yeah, it was very intuitive, of course, and naive, right? Some years ago. But it started with performing, the designer was performing, so it was me performing with my body.
Yeah.
And then if I started learning what that is, theorizing and really like, getting to know this kind of practice, this method, then I realized the participation could be even more exciting, where you have other people joining you. And that's why I kind of disappeared in the crowd more. So I'm part of it, but less individual. And I think that's much, much better for what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
If you hear the story, it's totally logical that you are part of that. But if you see your work just as on your website or so, it's like, gee, quite impressive. Any questions out there from the audience? Someone? No? Okay, Tereza, I'm sure that a lot of these guys, people here, will think about doing things differently. Thanks a lot for sharing.
Thanks a lot.
Great work. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for coming.